Morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us at the subcommittee this morning. My name is Councillor Keddy. We will move to election of the chair. Would somebody like to propose chair for the
propose you, Chair. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. And the second?
Yes.
Okay. As the appointed chair, I will be dealing with the following items. Firstly, housekeeping. I will pass over to the clerk to read out the following regarding how the meeting will be managed.
Thank you, Chair. Please note that this meeting is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. The meeting may also be recorded or streamed for live or subsequent broadcast by members of the public, although ultimate discretion in this matter lies with the Chair in case of disruption. For those in the room, please note that if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point at the War Memorial in the gardens opposite the front of this building in Bourne Avenue. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration. For those in the room, this includes turning off microphones and turning the volume down completely on your laptops. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any apologies for this meeting?
No apologies, Chair.
Thank you. Subcommittee members, do we have any declarations of interest?
No, Chair.
No, Chair.
Thank you. We have a protocol for public speaking at formal in-person meetings of the licensing subcommittee. This was included with the agenda sheet for this meeting. Has everybody had sight of that? Excellent. So on that note, we will move forward to item 5, which is the SEV license yearly review for Fioros only 134 to 136 Old Christchurch Road. I will ask each participant in the subcommittee to introduce themselves and state their role. I will start. I am Councillor Keddy and I am the chair of the subcommittee.
Councillor Chapman-Law, a member of the subcommittee.
Councillor Richardson, member of the subcommittee.
Councillor Tidaway, I'm observing only, so I won't take part.
Sorry, Sarah Rogers, Principal Licensing Officer.
Good.
My name's Linda Cole. I'm the legal advisor this morning for the subcommittee.
Rebecca Rhodes, clerk to the subcommittee.
And if you could introduce yourselves.
Good morning, sir. My name is Mrs. Palmer and I'm the legal representative.
Morning, sir. My name is Glenn Neesey. I'm the manager of Fioros Only.
Good morning, Emily Ivins, and I'm the director of Hampshire Restaurants licence holder.
Thank you. And we also have a representation.
I'm Susan Stockwell and I'm the objector.
Many thanks. So before I run through the procedure, please could I check that all persons who have given notice of their intention to speak have been identified? I believe that is the case. There is no dissent on that. Any person who wishes to withdraw a representation or wishes not to speak has been identified. Do we have any representations being withdrawn? Okay, we'll proceed. I'll now explain the proposed procedure and the order of speaking for the subcommittee hearing today. The licensing officer will open with their report. We will then have questions of the licensing officer by all parties, with members of the subcommittee to go first. The applicant will make their application, followed by questions from all parties. Subcommittee to go first. The objector will make their representations, and then we will have questions of the objector. The hearing will then conclude, and the subcommittee will deliberate in private with our legal advisor and clerk present. Where possible, notification of the subcommittee's decision will be in the period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day on which the hearing was held. The notification of the decision will include information about right as appropriate. I will now ask all parties to confirm agreement on the proposed procedure or to make representations. Is there any dissent from the process as outlined? Okay, then I think we are ready to proceed. Are you happy to this point? Excellent. May I remind all parties speaking not to repeat information which may already have been given in the papers, but to expand on their written representations. All questions are to be asked through, and there will be no cross-examination of parties present. I will now pass over to the licensing officer to present the report.
Thank you. Would you mind, Chair?
Sure.
In Mrs. Stockwell's objection, she did ask at the end of it to be able to read it. So it may be that you could have to consider she can read some of it out.
Okay.
Not repeat herself. It's a matter for you, but if you feel that you might need to just.
I have been. Okay.
I'm happy to withdraw that part, Chair.
Are
I'm confident that you've all read with my
thank you.
objections, so no problem, no issue there.
Okay.
That's great. Acknowledge it.
Okay. That has been acknowledged. Okay. We shall proceed to the licensing officer's report.
Thank you. Application is made by Hampshire Restaurants Limited for the renewal of the sexual entertainment licence held at 134 to 140 Old Christchurch Road for a further 12-month period. The premises have had the benefit of this licence, permitting the live performance of nudity known as relevant entertainment, and they've been operating for over 20 years. The current licence holders operating the premises since 2015. At the same time this application was made, an application for a minor variation under the Licensing Act was also made to change the layout of the premises and the plans. The purpose of this was to remove licensable activities from the ground floor and dedicate the area to improve facilities for performers. This application was granted and the changes to the plans have been approved as they are shown at Appendix 5. I think it's page 42 of the report. This application complies with the relevant legislation and the necessary site and newspaper notices were published in accordance with that. In addition to this, the notice of the application was published on the council's website. As a result, we have one objection which was received. The applicant has addressed the issues raised by the objector in an attempt to resolve her concerns, and a copy of that is attached to Appendix 7. No objections were received from Dorset Police, the Fire Service, Environmental Health, or Trading Standards, who were also consulted on this application. Any decision to refuse this renewal application must be relevant to the mandatory or discretionary grounds as set out in my report. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now have open up for questions to the licensing officer. Subcommittee members, do you have any questions on the report?
Yeah, can I just confirm that has there been any issues involving the police around the venue recently?
No, I've not received any complaints.
Any further questions from the subcommittee? Then we will move to other participants. Sorry? Yeah, absolutely.
Are you going
Yeah. So
May I question your officer, Chair? It's at your discretion. Obviously, I don't necessarily have permission for that.
I think we haven't got that far.
we will get to there. Do you have any questions? No. Applicants, would you like to address the report? Do you have any questions of the report as put?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Stockwell.
Yes, I do have a couple of questions, Chair. And the first is that would you be able to just clarify whether the possibility of adding conditions to a licence exists? This has come up before, but not with this applicant.
Please.
If the subcommittee, after they've determined the application, feel it necessary, proportionate and appropriate to add conditions, they would be able to, yes.
I appreciate that, Chair, and your officer. Also, could we just have a little word about the Bournemouth policy for licensing of sex establishments?
Ms Stockwell, I think at the moment what you're actually doing, where we are in the proceedings, is any questions of the licensing officer?
Well, my question of the licensing officer is, would you please include the Bournemouth policy for licensing of sex establishments in your report, as that, and my position is that it is needed because the committee risks Wednesday unreasonableness by not consulting their own policy.
We haven't got a policy.
Well, it's my
There's no-
position that you have, so
Yeah.
that's that. I say you have, you say you haven't.
Well, we haven't.
My understanding is that since the judicial review of the previous policy, we now do not have a policy as a council for SEVs, and we are reliant on the statutory Acts of Parliament. I'm
Well, I've
happy
made
to
my
have
position
clarification
clear
from our
that-
legal advisor on that.
There's no current policy. There was a judicial review against the policy. The court found in favour of that, and the council currently have no SEB policy, or sorry, sex establishment policy. SEB were part of the policy. So we haven't got a policy to consider. So all we have is the legislation, which is adequate. We can.
Well, it is rather late in the day because I only raised this about a week ago, but it is my position that you do have the Bournemouth policy, and the reason
that's fine. If that's your position,
the reason for that is
I'm telling you we haven't.
Yes, I've looked through.
I will have to move on from this particular point. Our legal counsel has made it very clear where the responsibilities and scope lies legally, and I think we can note that there is not an active policy at this time, and we are guided by the current legislation.
And lastly, the last question is that the issue of complaints recently was raised, that there haven't been any. However, in a report on a club last week, there had been complaints generally about fly posting and display boards. Now, it wasn't specifically said that that related to this club. However, I've been sent, and I do apologise, I can't control when people approach me with information, but I've been sent a picture last week of the front of FYO premises, and there is a display board there. So I just wonder if someone can give me some clarification on that.
Maybe what the applicants are speaking, or when you're asking a question of the applicant. At the moment, you're still asking questions of the licensing officer.
Yes, but I'm asking whether the complaints have been regarding that
received.
particular establishment.
No complaints have been received.
Yeah, that concludes my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So I would now like to invite the applicant to make their application to the subcommittee.
Thank you, sir. So I've had the privilege of representing this company or the operators of this establishment since it first opened in 1998. One of the first in the country. And throughout this time, there has been considerable financial and personal investment in the club, ensuring that it continues to operate at the highest standards in all respects. This has been evidenced in that there have been no statutory authority nor any local business or local resident objection to any of the renewals of the various licenses to enable it to operate as a lap dancing venue for the past 25 years. And that includes this year. It has held the requisite SEV license granted by this authority since that was first required in 2011. The mandatory and discretionary grounds for refusal of an application are very helpfully set out in your report. I respectfully submit that there is no evidence to support refusal on any ground except potentially for the ground of inappropriateness set out at 12.3d in your report. And so I will limit my address to the committee to those grounds, unless you're going to tell me that you wish me to address you on any other ground. So you will be aware, you've heard already, that the applicant has responded, and that response is at Appendix 7 in the report, and that includes a letter from the landlord of adjoining premises, which unfortunately remain unlet, they're empty still, confirming that the inability to relet those premises to trade has nothing to do with the business of FYO. As all parties have the report before them and have been able to kindly read that before today, I will, as requested, restrict my address to you as indicated. But obviously, if you do want any amplification on any of the issues in Appendix 7, I will be able to do that. So you're well aware that there are 3 grounds under paragraph 3D, and I'll take those in order, if I may. We have the character of the locality as the first ground. We have addressed that at H, and to amplify that, I would say, of course, there are changes in any town centre over time, and Bournemouth is no exception. There have been considerable changes in customer demographics, with women and others with different gender preferences now forming a far higher proportion of customers enjoying the club facilities. The fundamental nature of the locality and the use to which premises are put, however, remains the prime adult nighttime entertainment area for Bournemouth that it was when the club first opened. In fact, I think it's probably even more so now, and there has been no material change in this. This fact has been clearly recognised by the council in the introduction of the traffic-free zone on Fridays and Saturdays between 11 p.m. and 5 p.m. Thank you very much, 5 a.m. So I'm getting PMs and AMs mixed up. 5 a.m. due to the activity of customers of the late night venues in this area. The use of premises in the vicinity. Bournemouth has sadly suffered from the results of economic downturns and the after effects of COVID. But there is no evidence of material change in this still thriving late night vicinity, which would make it no longer suitable for this SEV license. Families with young children or young students in the area are very unlikely to even notice these premises, which present a tastefully subdued exterior. The dancers do not smoke at the front. They have their own enclosed protected area at the rear. The club only opens from 10 p.m. and unlike nightclubs, has a very low capacity of customers and so a low movement of customers. FYO also employs mainly adult students as bar and waiting staff. Whilst each application is obviously considered on its own merit, the committee has made a finding of no material change in granting the SEV licence to nearby Wiggle in June. And I would respectfully submit that there has been no change in the area in the past few months, which would cause a committee to reconsider its findings in this respect. Finally, layout, character or condition of the premises. I'm grateful to Mrs. Rogers for highlighting the change in plans, and you've heard the effect of that, considerably improving dance accommodation. And I would commend to you the change of the SEV plan accordingly. To paragraph 3 of the response relating to the use of the lane at the rear, which is a thorn in the side of particularly my clients, who, whilst they try and adhere to all the rules on waste disposal, others regrettably do not, and because they're at the end where it's collected, they suffer with the problems that do arise there, and they have been in communication with the council concerning that to see if there's a way forward. When the plans were approved, management was able, agreeing with Mrs. Stockwell on this occasion, that it wasn't appropriate for dancers to be having to use this area when it's not kept clean, to change their exit and entry route to 140 Old Christchurch Road, which is physically removed from the customer entrance at 136, and because of the curve in the road, can't actually even be seen. The two can't see each other. And so that is a much better solution. It's a well-controlled entrance with what I call an airlock system to prevent unauthorised entry. So FYO continues to operate as it has for decades without issues, and with a particularly strong and experienced team at the helm. It's a trouble-free and safe venue which continues to contribute responsibly to the nighttime economy of the town. So public sector equality duty is obviously something you must consider. You will have read what we say in this respect at paragraph 7 of the response. We would draw your attention in particular to the changing customer profile, which is quite noticeable now, and to the extensive controls in place to protect all genders whilst they're on the premises, including ensuring that only adults are permitted on the premises. So unless you have any questions either about what I have said or the written response, that is my address at this stage.
Thank you very much. I will now move to members of the subcommittee. If you have questions, Councillor Chapman-Law.
Yeah, has the frontage changed at all in the last since June last year? So the views on Street View, Google Street View, are what your frontages look like as of now?
So at the moment, you see a two-tone grey exterior. There is no indication of the style of club it is. There are just 4 initials on the bottom panels, if I remember rightly, of the doors saying FYEO, and over the top it says established since 1977.
So it doesn't say the Ultimate Table Dancing Club anywhere on the frontage. That's all off. Okay.
Do we have further questions from the subcommittee?
Yes, please. I'm just wondering, what's your average capacity, per night, and how many security staff do you have to manage them, as it were?
Let Mr. Nisi answer
At any one time, we've probably got about 50 people in, and we have three door staff on, as well as floor hosts and waitresses and other staff and management, obviously.
And do you have a lot of overspill outside the club from customers, or do they tend to stay in and go home when they're finished?
Yeah, no, don't really get a queue in our sort of business. So they stay for a couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours, and then they head off.
And one more, if I may. Did you say you employ student bar staff?
Yes, yeah, over 18, obviously.
Yeah. I was going to say, what's their sort of average age? Are they mature
19,
students?
20, 21.
Quite young students.
Yeah, but they're like two of them, a guy and a girl. They in the Compass route, the accommodation just around the corner there. They're in there, and they love it because it's a nice, easy access to work. They get a nice environment, and they get to go home nice and safely.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have further questions for the applicant?
Yes, Chair. I wondered if I could just go through this response, Appendix 7.
If you have a specific question.
Yes. The first is, I'm a little confused as to how a different company from the applicant and licensee can have taken over the reins of the business. My understanding is that it's the licensee that should be running it. Can anyone explain to me how that doesn't breach the condition that you mustn't, the licensee mustn't part with possession of the premises?
If the applicant would care to respond to that
Of
question.
course, sir. As you know, Mrs. Ivins, who's here today, is the director of the company that holds both the premises license and this SEV license for the premises. So there is no parting with possession. She has responsibility and overall control as the license holder. She is currently running another premises in Southampton as well, and very sensibly has felt that to ensure there is hands-on daily representation at the club throughout the necessary hours, she has instructed Mr. Nisi, who originally had this club, so he's extremely familiar with it, knows it inside out, and others who work with him. Between them, they've got 75 years experience to look after the club for them. So she's got him to take on the management on her behalf, which is perfectly acceptable and normal. It's rather like sorry, sir, I should have said, it's rather like a public house. There are several public houses around run by big breweries who hold the licenses, but their managers run the premises, and it's the same sort of setup.
Thank you. Could I remind all parties to address the chair rather than okay. Would you like to respond to that?
Well, that's not my position. My position is that possession of the property has been passed over, and the way it's written as handing over the reins to a different company. That's my position. Obviously, it's for the chair to decide.
Do you have a further question?
Yes, absolutely. Could we have some clarification, please, on how it's said that the Newcastle Club FYEO isn't anything to do with this FYEO? It's said elsewhere that Mr. Nicey, I hope I pronounced that correctly, is the owner of the brand FYEO. I wonder if you could clarify that.
If you'd like to respond, applicant.
Can I respond to that, Chair? I look after the brand of the South, not of the North. So I look after the brand for Cardiff and Bournemouth and Southampton.
Thank you for the clarification. Do you have further
Thank
questions?
you, and that probably answers my next question, that of course the Newcastle FYEO advertises a lot of sports events that aren't in the evening, where they open up and people come in during the daytime for sports events, and I assume that's nothing to do with you.
Nothing to do with us, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Could I also now move on to something that you were addressed on, that the investment?
Is this a
Right.
specific question for the
Yes,
applicant?
yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Could you explain how, with this very high level of investment, you still have a cracked front door, your front door mat is worn out, and, well, really, it's not, it's not what I would call the highest investment. It might be at a level for Old Christchurch Road, but I do think it's stretching it to say that's the highest investment.
Was there a question or was that a statement?
Can you explain how you call it the highest investment, and yet you still have, years on from when I first started doing these objections, a cracked front door and a worn out front door mat?
Chair, there's a small pane that has a crack in it. I agree. We need to replace that. The mat is on order and is due to arrive within the next week or so. It just has cigarette burns on the mat. It is worn out. I agree with Mrs. Dogwell, and that is underway now.
Okay, thank you for the clarity.
Also a question on the smoking area. That it's my understanding that when you file plans, they are of all the land. That's a small amount of curtilage and the property that's the building that's used for the business. Now, I would expect to see, as it's used in the business, the smoking area, and whether or not you own it, and the area at the front where the barriers are put out for a queue, to be included on that plan. Would you agree with that?
So the question is, should of the scope of plan requirements. But we first go to our licensing officer to clarify the scope of the plan.
Yeah, so the plans required for both licensing and the sex establishment are just the area that's covered by the license. So no licensable activities take place in those areas, therefore they don't have to be shown on the plan.
Thank you, Chair. And I was aware a couple of years ago that that was your officer's position, and it's not my position.
Do you have any further questions?
Yes, I'd just like to raise again, as it has been brought up that there's been no complaints, that a couple of years ago when someone did a freedom of information request, that the police came up with the suggestion that there had been some sort of sexual assault on the premises. Now, it was only one. In fairness, I misrepresented that at that time and suggested it was more than one, but it actually was only one alleged in their records. I wonder if you can shed any further light on that.
Sorry.
The police have made no representations, so we can't consider something historic. It may be your position, and if you've noted that and you've said that, that can be noted, but we haven't got any information from the police about it.
Thank you, Chair. I'm grateful for your officer's position being stated.
Do you have any further questions for the applicant?
Yes, just one left on here, and that is, are you able to confirm, as very experienced in this field and in licensing generally, you know, you really have got top-notch advice here, that the decisions of the licensing committee can't bind the future decisions of that committee, and I refer in particular to Wiggle being granted a licence not binding this committee, either to future Wiggle licences or this one.
I'll answer that. So yes, no, the decision that was made for Wiggle won't bind this licensing committee. No, and last year's decision won't bind this licensing committee.
I'm obliged, Chair, for the response of your officer.
So next we will move on to questions of the objector, and that would start with our subcommittee members. Do you have any questions for Ms. Stockwell? Oh, sorry. Oh, good point. Sorry, I thought we'd had the. Yes, I was getting ahead of myself. I do apologise. What I would like to do is move to the objector to make their statement.
Thank you, Chair. And I have to say it wasn't a bad move at all to go straight to that stage, because I'm going to be very brief. Practically everything that I was going to say as part of my expanding on my objection has come up through going through this. So we're, Appendix 7, apart from this thing, and that was in relation to the letter from the landlord. Now, my understanding is that there are 2 landlords to this property, or there were the last time I looked a couple of years ago. Is that still the case? Because this letter suggests that there is just the one. Actually, no, we're not on questions, are we? So perhaps I've left it too late. But it was a position a couple of years ago that there were 2 separate landlords. This might be the agent for both of them. Who knows?
So you're not required to, but if you wanted to give clarification on that, you would be welcome.
We're always willing to help Mr. Stockwell if we can. It's my client's understanding that the landlord that has active interest in dealing with subletting is as shown on the letter, but that there may have been a landlord, Whitbreads, I think you indicated, with a peppercorn rent over the premises. So that could well be what Mrs. Stockwell is finding, but the one who would be actively involved in trying to let the premises is as shown. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that input.
That is slightly different from my understanding. If I can just sort of wave my hands about a bit, if that's all right, that the premises are above 140, I beg your pardon, below 140, and then they're also below or on the ground floor level of somewhere where the numbers are a bit confusing, but it's certainly got 130 at the beginning, 113. Referred variously as different things, but when I approached the land registry, they sent me 2 separate leases which were due to run out this year, I think. So I suppose quite what's happened to the one on the left, I don't know. This seems to be the agent for the one on the right. So
It doesn't look like that information is forthcoming at the moment. We have closed the section where we are asking questions of the.
But that concludes what I have to say then. Thank you, Chair. I've always have a horror of not being able to make it to these hearings, so I do try and make my position as clear as possible in the paperwork.
Thank you, that's appreciated. So I'd like to invite subcommittee members to ask any questions of the objector, starting with.
No, here, Chair.
Okay. Do we have further questions for the objector from officers? Questions from the applicant? Okay. So we will move on to the next item on the agenda, Secretary's conclusion. Okay, so the committee would like to give all parties the possibility to sum up their positions prior to closing the hearing. We'll do that in reverse order, starting with the objector, Ms. Stockwell.
Just to summarise the points that I brought up on top of what I put in the objection, and that is that I do take the view that the Bournemouth policy, it's because it was revoked by the BCP policy, which itself was then quashed, leaving the Bournemouth policy back in existence. I also don't accept that historic points can't be made, because if we're going to hear all about how this club's been licensed for a long time, and I certainly don't dispute that, then you need to be hearing what's actually happened during that time. So that summarises my position. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the applicants like to sum up?
Thank you, sir, indeed. So there have been no objections to this renewal from any of the responsible authorities, nor from any of the students or the Livingston Academy or their representatives, or places of heritage interest or worship cited by the objector, nor those living or working in the vicinity. Once again, sir, with respect, I say that there is no evidence before you to justifiably support any refusal of this renewal. To the contrary, the evidence indeed supports the renewal on the same terms and conditions, and it is that which the applicant respectfully seeks today. Thank you, sir, for your time. That of your colleagues.
Thank you for your statement. Subcommittee members, do you have any summing up positions? Okay.
Mr. Stockwell, I just want to be clear what policy you think is important. You think so the original Bournemouth Borough Council policy, rather than the one that's been revoked?
Yes, I apologise for not bringing this up before, but I only noticed it recently.
That's fine. I just want to clarify.
Yes.
Sorry, you don't need to carry on. My position is still the same. I don't believe that policy is in force. Because it was subject to review, and the reviewed policy was the one that was judicially reviewed. So that I'm still up that we still have no policy, but I just wanted to clarify that that's what you were thinking.
What I was thinking was that it was a long time ago when I learned about judicial review, a very long time ago. So obviously things could have changed. It's taken me a bit of a while to look into it. But on looking at the BCP policy, at the very beginning, sort of within that policy rather than separately from the policy, is the revocation of the Bournemouth policy. Now, my understanding is, and I don't expect people to agree with me here and now because it's a pretty obscure point, that when you quash a decision made by a public authority, and in the quashing order that we had, that you go back to the position before that decision was made. And the position before the BCP sex establishment licensing policy
just the
was brought into existence.
Well, for the Bournemouth area.
Absolutely, for the Bournemouth area, but I think we're only dealing with Bournemouth at the moment. We don't have to worry about Poole if any applications come up in Poole. So yeah, that it actually revokes the BCP policy, revokes the existing sex establishment licensing policy. So it's my position that when you quash that policy, BCP, which has this revocation of Bournemouth, that immediately the Bournemouth policy sprang up. Now, I appreciate that it's taken me quite a while to actually even mention this.
Okay, well, I would have to think more about that anyway, but I think if that is the situation, then in some ways it makes it clearer for the council. But I mean, I would have to speak, because I mean, we did have a policy that we had a location area and we had a numbers area. So if anything, that makes it easier for me.
It is just a bit risky. I appreciate on my
If
point,
anything,
because
it makes it easier for the applicants who are only asking for renewals, because it means that we wouldn't be considering some of the stuff maybe that the Act says. But I think the position that we have and we have been considering the renewals of this type of venue is that we don't have a policy in force.
I appreciate that's the position that's been adopted, and I'm rather throwing a spanner in the works. You have the advantage of me because I don't really know much about the pre-existing Bournemouth policy. So, except that I understand that it did limit to 3 the number of strip clubs in the area. So I'd be very interested to see what the rest of it.
3 in the town centre.
Yes, I'd be very interested to see what the rest of it said as a member of the public.
Okay, thank you.
I believe that is, yeah, so we are at. So I believe everybody has summed up their positions. The applicant, have you summed up your position? You did, yes, indeed. So I'd like to thank everybody for participating in the subcommittee this morning. I will now conclude the hearing. At the end of this meeting, the subcommittee will adjourn in private with the legal advisor and the clerk to deliberate. Notification of the subcommittee's decision will be provided within the period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day on which the hearing was held in accordance with the regulations. The notification of decision will include information about the rights appropriate. All parties may now leave and the decision will be conveyed to you in writing. Thank you for taking part in the subcommittee today.